It's really hard to say. I love Rodgers as a quarterback, but it would be nice to see a young guy go in, make a name for himself as the new Giants quarterback.
We're back with Football Forecast Offseason edition. He's Kaynen, I'm Anthony, and we got a lot to get into this episode. We got the Travis Kelce news, we got the Matthew Stafford news, we also got Bill Belichick and North Carolina, who's going to be on national television. We got some Aaron Rodgers rumors, and we got plenty much more to get into. Also, make sure to follow the Football Forecast on all social medias, on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, on TFB Forecast ETB. Also, make sure to follow MT the Bench Network podcast on all social medias, on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. Also, make sure to be following our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. Make sure that you listen to us and listen to Football Forecast and all our shows anywhere that you can, and on all of our podcasts, any way that you listen to your podcast, whether you listen to them on the go or you watch them on TV. Also, make sure to subscribe to our ETP Network Substack. It's a new thing we started. We got all kinds of new shows in the MMA world, in the baseball world, in the basketball world. So any sports that you love, you'll definitely love to subscribe to this. It's definitely worth the price, and you'll get everything that you pay for. That is going to be at etbnetwork.substack.com. So definitely make sure to be following that. Also, the Football Forecast. This is presented by Playback. Wouldn't it be possible for us to do this without them? So definitely make sure to look at them and look at Playback. And like I said, it's sponsored by them. And stay tuned because we got more information on that later. But like I said, Keenan, we got a great show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing real good. Definitely glad that it's getting ready for the weekend, and we got a lot of football news. Obviously, off-season show is supposed to be for breakdowns, and we're not used to these many storylines, but the last 2 weeks we got a lot of storylines. So, like I said, I can't wait to get into it. So let's get started. We got some news down in Kansas City this week. Travis Kelce has officially announced that he is going to return in 2025. And the Chiefs were able to franchise tag their most important free agent in Trey Smith. This was great, big news for Kansas City Chiefs fans. And I'll give my breakdown. But Keenan, what were your thoughts on this first?
Yeah, I think this is interesting because Kelce is such a phenomenal player. He's accomplished so much. And for a guy with a resume like that and like the option just to hop on your billionaire girlfriend's jet and fly off into the sunset, it's hard to blame him for considering retirement. But, he decided to return for this upcoming season, and I think that just shows how much he loves the game. I really wouldn't be surprised if he comes back like super locked in, does amazing. And not only do I think that will like help him, push him, motivate him, I think that will motivate his teammates as well, and they're just going to come back better than ever.
Yeah, it's definitely absolutely true, Keenan. And with Travis Kelce, you mentioned how easy it would be for him just to ride into the sunset and be with the wonderful Taylor Swift. But also, too, he's got a podcast that he does with his brother. He could do that and make probably just as much money, if not more money, than what he does playing in the NFL. I mean, we've seen how much money like people like Joe Rogan and others make for doing podcasts and shows like that. So, Travis Kelce is going to be pretty much set for life and be able to do whatever he likes. But what he said was, after that loss and the way he performed in that game, it left a bad taste in his mouth. And he didn't want to go out like that. And having such a storied career and being on the Mount Rushmore of tight ends, and whether you like him personally or whether you hate him, at the end of the day, he's one of the greatest tight ends that this league and, frankly, this planet has ever seen. And he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he should be able to do whatever he decides to do. Now, he believes that he can still play good football. He said he's going to get into the best shape of his life. I think that's a good thing. But what also that makes me question is, if he's saying he's going to get into the best shape of his life, well, why wasn't he in the best shape of his life last season? I mean, like, he wasn't dealing with any injuries that I know of coming into the season. So was he distracted last season? Was he doing too many things during the offseason with Taylor Swift? I wonder if this season if he's going to make some adjustments and maybe spend less time doing extracurricular activities with Taylor this offseason, spend more time in working out. And maybe he'll tell Taylor, like, hey, I won't spend as much time with you this offseason, but hey, I'm going to play one more season and then retire, and then I'll be free going on forward. So I think he's going to go all in this year. But like I said, it makes me question where was his mindset a year ago. But knowing the way he is and the competitor he is, I do think he'll rebound, and I do think he'll have a decent farewell season. Whether that leads the Chiefs to a Super Bowl or not, I'm not sure yet. They still got some other work to do, but it's definitely a good addition. Trey Smith, on the other hand, I mean, that was crucial. I did not think they were going to be able to re-sign him. I think now this means they probably won't be able to keep Nick Bolton. They're probably going to lose him. But they do have Leo Seminole, who's probably just as good, if not better, linebacker. But Trey Smith is what makes their interior line so good. Him and Joe Tooney and Creed Humphreys. That's the best part of their offensive line. Their tackles are what's weak. So getting Trey Smith, obviously it's a franchise tag, so it's a one-year deal. Doesn't mean they're going to get him long-term, but the fact that they were able to bring him back, I think that was super, super crucial, Kaynen. And I think getting these two guys back is definitely a step in the right direction for Kansas City to get back to the Super Bowl. So obviously, we have some news that down in Los Angeles. We had Matthew Stafford, who finally, after all the news and after all the rumors, was able to get a restructured deal that he's been asking for from Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams. Now, Kaynen, there was rumors, all over the place, talking about how he's going to go to this team or the other team or the Giants possibly trading for him or, and then there was even news about the Raiders who were interested in him and how Pete Carroll really wanted to coach him and how Tom Brady even had a dinner with them and was on the phone with them on a daily basis trying to get Matthew Stafford in. And I'm not sure if those are true. But I guess either way, it doesn't matter because Matthew Stafford was able to get what he wants. Now, they didn't release the terms, so we don't know what exactly his restructured deal is. But, I mean, the guy was kind of underpaid. I mean, he wasn't even in the $50 million range. I mean, and when we see guys like Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott, and Trevor Lawrence making, in the 50s, Dak Prescott $60 million, I mean, Matthew Stafford's got to be at least in the $50 million as well. I know he's a little older. I know he's got injury issues. But Dak Prescott has some injury issues as well. And Matthew Stafford has a Super Bowl. And he's proved when he's on the field and you got him some talent around him and just give him some decent help, he can lead you to the promised land. So I agree that he definitely need a restructured deal. And I'm glad that he got it because I don't think there's no other team he would rather play for than the Rams. But what were your thoughts about this, Kaynen?
Yeah, I think he really took that pay cut right when he got to the team because he wanted to win that Super Bowl that he won them. And now that he has it, I think, just like you said, he just wanted money like the other guys. There's no reason he should be underpaid like that. He plays phenomenal, even though he's getting a little older, has a couple injuries. I think he deserves it, and I completely agree with what you said. Underpaid.
Yeah, and the thing is too, Kaynen, like if the Rams did trade him, like what is their alternative? I mean, I know you got Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's got injury issues. He's proved that, maybe at this point he's not even a good quality starter anymore. I mean, the 49ers chose Brock Purdy over him, and then he didn't really have much success in the Raiders. I think he's a great backup, but at this point, I don't think you want to rely on Jimmy Garoppolo and Stetson Bennett, the young guy they got, it's unproven. So I think this makes complete sense. I mean, unless that they plan on drafting a quarterback this year or next year, but you don't want to put a rookie quarterback in right away. And I mean, with the talent that this team has and going in the second round of the playoffs, I mean, we'll break down their offseason later in the show. But this is a team that thinks that they can compete and win now, and rightfully so. So I think it makes sense to keep Matthew Stafford, restructure his deal, try to, do the best you can to compete for the next 2-3 years, and then decide to go and look into the future. But I think this makes complete sense, Kaynen, for where the team's at. And then we also had Bill Belichick, who's now back in the news. Bill Belichick at North Carolina, the North Carolina college football team is going to be on Hard Knocks. This is the first time ever, kid, and Hard Knocks is always strictly NFL. But, when Hard Knocks first started, they were only typically like a preseason show where they kind of would take the team, they would show they would pick one team each season, and they would kind of fill them throughout the entire preseason up until the regular season started. So they would kind of follow the team for about 5 or 6 weeks, and then it pretty much would end. Well, the show got so popular that the producers decided, well, why just do it during the preseason? Why not just do it during the regular season? And then they started doing that. That became successful. So then they decided, well, why don't we do an even off-season show so we can see the fans see an inside perspective on the draft and free agency. Well, it didn't backfire in terms of viewership. I mean, the fans loved it, and it definitely was viral. But it backfired on the team that did it last year, the New York Giants. The New York Giants did the offseason show last year, and everybody knows the storyline of the Giants offseason last year was the Saquon Barkley negotiations. Well, that backfired because you got to show the fans how inept that the GM of the Giants possibly might be. And the fact that he was able to let Saquon Barkley hit the open market and determine his value. And then now you look at a year later and the guys won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, and the Giants are one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL. So I think the teams looked at that and was like, you know what? Like, it's one thing to do it during the season where we're just playing games, but to do it during the offseason where we're grading players, deciding what players on the team, on our team we want to keep, what players to draft, you're pretty much getting your inside opinion on what you think of your own players. And I just think that's too much information. I think that should be kept private. With college, there really isn't, obviously there's the transfer portal, but the transfer portal is pretty much going to be over by then. So with college, there's not really going to be much controversy. There's not going to be really a draft. There is no draft. There is no free agency. So I think college, it's a little easier to kind of do an offseason show because pretty much it's just the young guys practicing and trying to get better. But it's definitely interesting, Kaynen, to see Bill Belichick coach in college after being this NFL legend. I never thought I'd see the day of Belichick coaching in college. And now to see him in North Carolina, and now we're going to be able to see him on primetime television. It's definitely going to be interesting. I can't wait to watch. What are your thoughts about this, Kaynen?
Yeah, like you said, it's going to be really interesting. We're going to be able to get to see a different side of Belichick, not only on a coaching standpoint in college, but get a little more behind the scenes, maybe see some personality out of him. It'll be really interesting. And I really like what you said about the Giants. I mean, I think that just showed like the incompetency of the organization when you had the GM's son or whoever that young guy was saying, you got to keep Saquon, you got to keep Saquon. And they let him go. Just like you said, they won a Super Bowl. Look what happened. Look at the Giants.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Kaynen. And I'm glad that this storyline led into the Giants because the Giants are going to be on our show this week. The Giants, this offseason, are maybe trying to make right and maybe do some things in the right direction. The New York Giants, there's rumors that the Giants might be interested in Aaron Rodgers. So Aaron Rodgers might not have to move after all. And I mean, if it was up to Aaron Rodgers, I think he would love to stay in New York. I mean, at the end of the day, he always said he loved the city. But the Giants now are saying that they're interested in Aaron Rodgers. Now, when you really think about it, at first it caught me by surprise. But now when you look deeper into it, it does kind of make sense. Because with the Giants kind of being in a win-now mode, does it really make sense for Brian Daboll and the GM to draft a rookie quarterback when basically their jobs are on the line this year? I mean, I hate when teams draft a rookie quarterback when your coach is basically on a one-year prove-it deal because basically the coach is going to coach that quarterback one season, get fired, and now your quarterback's going to have to spend his first 2 seasons learning 2 different systems. And that's just bad for a quarterback's confidence. I think the NFL teams that are smart, if you draft a rookie quarterback, whoever's the coach, you make him the head coach for at least those first 2 seasons, whether you agree with him or not. If that's the case, if you're going to draft a rookie quarterback and fire Brian Daboll after 1 year, then you should have just fired him before the season. If not, and you are going to go the rookie quarterback route, then keep Brian Daboll for 2 years to at least give your rookie quarterback a chance. But now hearing that they're interested in Aaron Rodgers, now that makes the most sense in the world because now you get a guy who could come right in, whether you hate him or not. The guy wasn't that bad last year. I know he's not a great leader, and his off-the-field issues are what makes him, a bad guy in the locker room. But his play on the field has been really well. Behind a bad New York Jets offensive line, the guy threw 28 touchdowns. Now if he goes to the Giants, I mean, you got Malik Neighbors. If they could draft some offensive line, I mean, now, and if you get Aaron Rodgers, now they could spend their 3rd overall pick on something that's not a quarterback. Now maybe you're drafting a Travis Hunter. Maybe you could get lucky and get Abdul Carter. So now imagine if you get Aaron Rodgers and Travis Hunter, and you have an offense with Malik Neighbors, Aaron Rodgers, and Travis Hunter. And then you have Travis Hunter also contributing on defense. So I think this makes complete sense when you look at it, especially given the fact that Brian Daboll's in a win now. And I think if you put Aaron Rodgers and Travis Hunter on the Giants, they probably are a 9-win team and could probably sneak into one of those last wild card playoff spots. I think Aaron Rodgers can still play decent football as long as you can get a protection. And I think that's what the Giants are going to have to draft in those second and third rounds. Now, what are your thoughts about this, Kaynen?
Yeah, like you said, his off the field antics kind of overshadowed what he was doing on the field. He had a decent season. He played really well, and I think the same. If you use that third draft pick for anything other than a quarterback, that just makes the team so much better as well, because those are the guys that can make like the immediate impact. Imagine lining up Abdul Carter opposite of Thibodeau and have Lawrence in the middle. That'd be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I don't know how you block that, Keenan. I mean, Lawrence is a big boy in the middle and one of the best defensive tackles, and then you got to worry about Thibodeau, Burns, and Carter. I mean, that would be unbelievable. And like I said, I think Aaron Rodgers, if they could build an offensive line around him, would be decent. Now, Keenan, I know you're kind of a decent Giants fan, a little Giants fan, and I know you and your family follow the team a little bit. Now, let me ask you, as a small Giants fan, who would you rather have as your quarterback next season? Aaron Rodgers, Shedeur Sanders, or Cam Ward?
Jeez, part of me wants to go with the young guys just for like the gambling sake, like the upside. I think with Rodgers, it's now or never, and I'm really not confident if he could do that. We saw what he did with the Jets. He brought over his own players. He did this, he did that. Still couldn't get it done. It's really hard to say. I love Rodgers as a quarterback, but it would be nice to see a young guy go in, make a name for himself as the new Giants quarterback.
Yeah, I agree, Keenan. The thing is, Aaron Rodgers really only helps you for 1 year. I mean, that young quarterback can help you for the next 10 to 15 years. So it definitely helps you more long term. So that's definitely a great point. We have some trade rumors and some trade news that's going on in the NFL. Jonathan Allen, that defensive tackle from the Washington Commanders, are in trade talks, and they're allowing him to seek a trade. Now, he's one of the premier defensive tackles in the NFL. I mean, he's been a great player since he came into this league, and even when their team was trash, he was still competing at a Pro Bowl level. And now that their team's good, he's still a leader and contributing at that Pro Bowl level, and he's one of the best, if not the best player on their defense right now. So it is surprising that he's demanding a trade. But I think what it is, Ken, is I think he wants a new deal. And he is a little on the older side. And the Commanders' defense, I know, not saying it was Allen's fault. Allen played great. He wasn't the problem. But their defense struggled last year, and that was pretty much the Achilles heel to their team. I think the way they're looking at it is they don't want to give any of their older defensive players any money, because I think they're going to spend a lot of their money on some of those young defensive players, and I think they want to have a whole new young defense that can compete and dominate for the next 5 years while you have Jaden Daniels on a rookie deal. I don't think they want to have any of these older players and overpay for them now. And yeah, the first 2 years would be great, but then you're regretting it that third and fourth and fifth year of his contract. I think knowing you got this great young phenom rookie quarterback, you want to get some young defensive players who are going to be around for a while. So I think it's mainly because of that. And I think Jonathan Allen is going to go to another team and contribute. And I think the Commanders will get another young guy who may not be as good, but will be able to contribute for a lot longer and probably be at a cheaper price. So I think it makes sense for both teams, but it's definitely upsetting for a guy who's been on their team for so long and been pretty much the face of their defense. And now that they're getting great, we're probably not going to see him on the team anymore. So it's definitely a little disappointing, but I think it'll work out for both teams. What are your thoughts, Kaynen?
Yeah, it really is a shame because he's been such like a consistent player, and now that they're finally finding some success, they're letting him go. That's kind of a hard storyline. But the facts are that if they move Allen, that frees up $16 million. They have over 15% of their salary cap tied up in two players, De'Aaron Payne and Jonathan Allen. Now, if you get rid of De'Aaron Payne, that only frees up $300,000. So I think this is the right move. You put people around Daniels that he'll be with a while, that will help him exponentially. Like you said, the defense was lackluster. So I think this is the right move. Frees up a lot of money for them, gives them a lot of stuff to do, and look forward to this offseason.
Yeah, Ken, that was a tremendous point, and that makes a lot of sense. And the Commanders, who already have a decent amount of cap space, if they could add to it, with the way this team is going and the direction they're going, and the fact that they were able to keep Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator, I mean, this team is just going to keep going in the right direction. And they're probably the only team that could maybe really challenge the Eagles in that division. Speaking of the NFC East, Zach Martin for the Dallas Cowboys did retire. Now, he is a little on the older side. He's been in the league for a while, and he has been dealing with a lot of injuries. It's definitely sad to see an all-time great player. In my opinion, I think he's a Hall of Famer. He's been to so many Pro Bowls. I think he's been to 9 Pro Bowls, if I'm correct. So I definitely think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I know interior offensive linemen at guard and center have a tough time making the Hall of Fame, and sometimes they have to wait a little longer. So maybe he won't get in first ballot, but I definitely think he'll definitely get in the Hall of Fame, whether it's in 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years after he's eligible. He's definitely going to make the Hall of Fame. I mean, over the last decade, he's been either the first, second, or third best guard every single season he's been in the league. So, I mean, if that doesn't scream Hall of Fame, I mean, I don't know what else does. Like I said, it's probably just because of the position, but I think he's an all-time great player. For the Dallas Cowboys, yes, this is a huge loss. But like I said in the beginning, he's been hurt a lot and has missed some games over the last few seasons. So the Dallas Cowboys are kind of used to playing without him. But at the end of the day, losing a guy like that and just losing his veteran leadership in the locker room, even if he's not playing the field, his veteran leadership is still helping the young guys who are stepping in for him. And without having that guy in the locker room, that still hurts as well. So, and this has honestly, Kaynen, been a really disastrous offseason, in my opinion, for the Cowboys. I mean, they got probably one of the worst head coaching hires in the NFL in Brian Schottenheimer. Everybody's questioning that. There's so many questions with everything else that's going on with their organization. So the Dallas Cowboys seem to be going on the decline, and I'm not sure how good of a season that they're going to have next season, Kaynen. But what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, that was a good point. I think disastrous is the perfect word for the offseason. But regarding Zach Martin, he's had a tremendous career, Hall of Famer for sure. Out of his 11 years, he was selected first team All-Pro 7 times, which is ridiculous. He's arguably the best guard in NFL history. And, it is sad to see him retire, especially due to what I think is reoccurring injuries. He had an ankle injury that required surgery that held him to 10 games last season. So it's really shouldn't be a surprise with that coming up that he's retiring. And I'm just gonna say it again, absolutely disastrous for the Cowboys. I mean, you have 2 teams in their division that have proven they have been threats in the playoffs. They could potentially make the Super Bowl push. With the Eagles, they did make the Super Bowl push and they won. So that's a big loss for the Cowboys, who just keep struggling.
Yeah, and then we were talking about the Giants earlier. Now, you put Aaron Rodgers and Travis Hunter on the Giants with how great the Eagles and the Commanders are. I mean, does that make the Dallas Cowboys the worst team in their division next season? I mean, and if you're the worst team in your division next season, you're probably picking someone in the top 5 and probably one of the top 5 worst teams in the league. So, Kaynen, this team might end up being the worst team in their division next season.
Yeah, definitely. If the Giants can get a quarterback and maybe a target for him like Hunter, as you say, definitely the Cowboys are going to be the worst in the division. I think Zach Martin was their only saving grace that kind of made them like a respectable team. You haven't really seen much out of anybody else besides like maybe Parsons, but it's really tough for the Cowboys right now.
Yeah, I mean, the only maybe silver lining is there's a lot of mock drafts out there that got the Dallas Cowboys drafting your boy Ashton Genty. So, I mean, if you put Ashton Genty on an offense with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, that is exciting. And even if their team may not be able to win a lot of games, I mean, I think that alone would make them at least competitive enough. So I think if they get Ashton Genty, I think that's the one team that could probably save their offseason and at least keep them as a competitive team next season.
Yep.
We also got the NFL Player Association team report cards. Now, this is something that, I never really dig deep in, but this offseason I decided to, and I looked into it, and I saw that Miami was first place, and, I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, who doesn't want to live in Miami? I mean, so they kind of have an advantage. I mean, look at how it is living in Miami, and then look at how it is here living in Buffalo, and you tell me who's going to grade out better. So there's no way that my Buffalo Bills are ever going to be able to beat Miami in that regard. But there's some other things that they do take a factor in consideration. As the team facilities, your locker room, your training facilities, your strength coaches. Those are obviously things no matter what location you have, you can control. That's just whether if your owner wants to spend the money to get top of the line strength coaches, top of the line equipment, and all that other stuff. So, like I said, Miami was number one. And obviously you can say it's because of where they're at. But they were number one in a lot of things that a lot of other teams can't control. Like I said, team facilities, they were one of the top teams in. They had great player treatment, great strength and conditioning coaches. And like I said, you can get that anywhere if you pay the money for it. So Miami definitely puts an emphasis in treating their players well. Like I said, they live in Miami, which is an advantage, but they definitely go the extra mile to make sure their players are happy. On the flip side, the Arizona Cardinals was last. And they're pretty much the opposite of the Dolphins, where the Dolphins are pretty much first or second in everything. Well, the Cardinals were pretty much last in everything except for coach. The only thing that the team really liked was, I guess, their head coach. I guess their head coach treats them the right way. But other than that, their categories and everything were terrible. I mean, I guess their locker room situation was graded out the worst in the league. Their training rooms wasn't graded out that well. And I guess if you're a Cardinals player, I guess maybe after this survey got released, maybe the Cardinals could put more money into their facilities and make the players a little bit more happier. But what are your thoughts about this, Kaynen?
Yeah, you got to think with that Arizona weather, that would not be the weather you want to play football in. Even though it's sunny, like 110 degrees, whatever it gets to out there, that'd be really tough. What I thought was interesting was their head coach being ranked so high. And that just shows like what a good leader is, like what he could do for the team. So that's interesting. And it's no surprise Miami's top number one. I mean, like you said, who wouldn't want to live there? The weather, the nightlife, and especially with the facilities the way they are, I think that's a big part for the players. I mean, if you don't have the right tools, you can't get the job done. So that just helps so much more. That takes their mind off the field stuff so they could focus on their game better.
Yeah, and also too, location does matter too. And I mean, when it comes to strength and conditioning coaches, I mean, most of them probably live in warm weather places. I mean, most of them guys who are, fitness gurus aren't going to live in cold weather places. I mean, they like to be in warm weather climates to where they could get out, be outside all year round and be active. So most of those guys are prone to be down in Florida, California, or Texas. So that definitely gives Miami an advantage there. The football forecast is presented by Playback. Watching sports is fun, but it's more fun with others. We spend way too much time watching it alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, from repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. Now back to the show. Now, we get into the best part of the show and what makes the offseason show the offseason show. We finally get to do the team offseason breakdowns. And like I said, before free agency, we're going to break down all the playoff teams and their offseason previews. So we're going to go in order. And now this week, we're going to break down all the teams who lost in the division around the playoffs. And we got to start with a team that a lot of players and fans did not think was going to lose in the division round and was going to go much further. And that was the Detroit Lions. So the Detroit Lions, unfortunately, was upsetted this year in the second round to the Washington Commanders. Everybody thought at the very least, the way this team performed, even with the injuries to their defense, they were expecting at minimum a conference championship appearance. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, you want to win the Super Bowl, and that was their aspirations. But at the end of the day, you at least want to see them make it to the conference championship, especially since the fact that they just made the conference championship the year prior. So I guess this is kind of an upset for them. And also, too, they've lost both their coordinators now. Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are off to be head coaches. And that's a huge loss. I mean, everybody said the Lions had the best coordinators in the NFL. They could have been head coaches probably a year prior, but they decided to stay in Detroit because of how much they loved the team, how much they loved the players, and how much they respected Dan Campbell. But, Aaron Glenn's gone and Ben Johnson's gone, so they got new coordinators. So we got to see how that's going to be replaced. I mean, we've seen other teams, when they lose their coordinators, they struggle at first. The Philadelphia Eagles, when they made the Super Bowl a couple years ago, lost both their coordinators, and they kind of took a step back before ultimately becoming great again. But when we look into their offseason as a whole, they do have $52 million in cap space, and they are going to get their best player on defense back from injury, Aiden Hutchinson, who was looking like the defensive player of the year before his injury. So that's a huge get back. When you look at the free agents, they got their great Pro Bowl level guard, Kevin Zeitler. They got Carlton Davis, Tim Patrick, and they got a lot of their depth corners who are going to be free agents as well. I think Carlton Davis, given his age, they're probably not going to re-sign him. I think they'll definitely re-sign Kevin Zeitler because they definitely built their offense by and through their offensive line. And him being a little older and being in Detroit for so long, they could probably get him back on a cheap short-term deal. So I think they re-sign Zeitler. But I don't think they're going to re-sign anybody else. Tim Patrick's probably going to be gone. They're going to lose a lot of their depth corners, and they're probably going to lose Carlton Davis. But like I said, they'll get their most important free agent back in Kevin Zeitler. They have the 20th pick in the draft. And when I look at their needs, Kaynen, they definitely need corner really bad. I mean, they drafted Terry Arnold last year from Alabama, who's great. I think that guy's going to be a Pro Bowl level corner. But that's pretty much all they have. I mean, Amik Robinson's not too bad, but a lot of those guys that they have are older, and a lot of them are free agents. So, and when we saw some of those injuries that they had no depth at that position. So you got to get some other young guys to put around Terry Arnold to build up that secondary in the corners. Edge rusher, they need that as well. They're pretty much in the same predicament at that position where you got only one great player that you can rely on. You got Aiden Hutchinson, and he's coming back from a serious injury, so you really can't rely on him early on. So they definitely need some edge rusher help on the opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson to take the pressure off him early on. Some other smaller needs that they could use, they could definitely use another defensive tackle depth. You got Allen McNeil and Reeder, but those guys could definitely get hurt. And defensive tackles, you like to have depth, and you definitely want to get a third guy in there for certain situations. And then they're going to need a wide receiver 3. You got St. Brown, who's one of the best receivers in the league. You got Jamison Williams, who's electric and could take top off of defense. But you're going to need a wide receiver 3. And with Tim Patrick probably going to be leaving free agency, I think they could use another receiver in the later rounds of the drafts that can pair with those guys. But what are your thoughts about the Lions offseason, Kaynen?
Yeah, I think this is really tough for the Lions. I mean, they're losing Aaron Glenn. I think that's a huge hit to them. Their defense was phenomenal. I agree. They need to do something on the defense with Aiden Hutchinson coming back. It's not going to be enough to just have him on one edge. You need someone on the other side that could, make sure he doesn't get double teamed, that could draw some attention to him. I like the defensive tackle. I think that would be a great pickup for them. And what I think they need to do is extend Kirby Joseph. He's one of the best safeties. If they keep him, that would kind of, back up the corners that they draft or bring in who might not be the strongest. That would be a good safety blanket for them because they are lacking in the corner position, which is very important. I think that would have helped them out a lot in the playoffs and would have, maybe gave them a better chance to win, but you can never be too sure. And, I had high hopes for the Lions past couple season, and I still do because they're an awesome team to watch. They're gritty. They run the ball. It's just really cool football to watch.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up, Kaynen. Kirby Joseph. Yeah, he's not a free agent this year, but I think he's only got 1 year left on his deal. And he's a tremendous player. I think he's got 1 or 2, but I think it's probably 1 year left on his deal. And he was one of the best safeties in football, Kaynen. I mean, in the combination of him and Brian Branch was probably the best safety duo in the NFL. Yeah. And that was one thing that kind of saved their ass when their corners were kind of playing poor and were struggling. It was those two safeties. Now, if you get some great corners around those safeties, I mean, those guys are just going to be unstoppable because they're not going to have to be relied upon so much and have to take up so much of the field. Yeah. And they're going to be able to just focus on their job and your job only. So, yeah, those two safeties are great, and you definitely got to lock up Kirby Joseph. Like I said, he was a top 3 safety in the league, and he should be paid like one. So that makes a lot of sense, Kaynen. And when you re-sign a guy, sometimes that frees up some money early on. But either way, you got to re-sign him. And like I said, you re-sign him, you build up some corners. I mean, that's going to be exactly what the Lions need. I think their offense will probably be fine. Like I said, they could probably use a wide receiver 3, but their offense is great. I know they lost Ben Johnson, the coordinator, but I think a few coordinators could do a good job with the talent that they have on their offense now. So they definitely got to go wall defense because that's what pretty much cost them because there was no way that they were stopping Jaden Daniels. And I know Jared Goff threw some interceptions, but even if he didn't, I don't think they were stopping Jaden Daniels that night. We also got another team who had aspirations that were supposed to go further in the divisional round, and that was the Baltimore Ravens. So the Baltimore Ravens, who was just in the conference championship a year ago as well, lost in a very close game in the divisional round to the Buffalo Bills. And there were a 2-point conversion catch away that Mark Andrews unfortunately dropped from maybe sending that game to overtime. And who knows what happens there. But my biggest takeaway from that is I know we had the turnover, but I think Lamar Jackson finally proved that he could play good in the playoffs. I think this was the first year where he proved that he could be clutch and play good in the big games. We always known that he could be one of the best quarterbacks in the regular season, but he always dropped off in the playoffs. And like I said, in the playoffs this year, he did not drop off, and I think he played great. So this year, it's not his fault. And I think that's a very good sign for the Ravens because now they showed, well, hey, now if we could actually play good around Lamar Jackson won't choke the game for us in the playoffs like he did in the past. Now they just have to have a year where it all comes together, where Lamar plays good and the team around them plays good. Like I said, they just haven't been able to all come together at one point. But when I look into their offseason, they have about only $10 million in cap space. They have a huge free agent in Ronnie Staley. That's their left tackle. So they definitely got to re-sign him. You got Brandon Stevens, who struggled, so I think he's gone. He was their corner. You got Brett Urban, who's one of their depth defensive tackles. I think he's probably gone. Darius Washington, who was a really good safety who paired with Kyle Hamilton, he's a restricted free agent. So I think that they re-sign him. Restricted free agents usually stay. Trey White's probably gone. Tywan Wallace, one of their depth receivers, they may be able to keep him on a short-term deal, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone. So in my opinion, I think they probably just re-sign Ronnie Staley. They definitely can't lose one of their premier tackles, especially with the way Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry like to play. You definitely got to have a good offensive line. So I think they re-sign Staley, and they probably let the other free agents go. They have the 27th pick in the draft. I think one of their needs is edge rusher. You got Kyle Van Noy, who did dominate last year, but he is a little older. You got Terrarius Robinson, and you got Owe, but those guys are good, but not elite. I think you can try to use another young guy that could go in there who has a lot of upside that could obviously eventually be the replacement for Van Noy, since Van Noy is a little on the older side. I think they could also use some interior line. Their center is one of the best in the league, Linderbaum. They got great offensive tackles, but I think their guard play could be a little bit better. So I think they could draft some guards. I think that would be a tremendous addition for them. And I think they could probably use a corner. I love Nate Wiggins, the 21-year-old rookie from Clemson who did really well last year. I think he could be a Pro Bowl level corner, and I love his potential. But Marlon Humphreys is going to be 29 years old next season, so corners don't really play that far past the age of 30. So you got to think of a replacement for him, and you need a corner outside of those guys as well. You need 3 corners in the NFL these days. So you need a guy, to go along with Nate Wiggins and Marlon Humphreys, and you also need a young guy to develop under Marlon Humphrey. So I think what would be perfect is for them to get a young guy who could be that third corner, and then in a couple years when Humphrey retires or goes to another team, he could become the other corner to pair along with Nate Wiggins. So I definitely think they could use another young corner. But what are your thoughts about the Ravens offseason, Kaynen?
Yeah, I loved what you said about the offensive guards. When you have a guy like Derrick Henry in the backfield, having guards up the middle that you can rely on is so important because that's where you want Henry to be. You want him to go downhill, gain speed, hit whoever's in front of him. Having guards like that to open up the gap and get them to the secondary, I think that's just the perfect play. What I didn't hear you say, what I think would be a good pickup on the offense as well, is maybe a wide receiver, like just a wild card out there. Give them Lamar someone that he could just bomb it to. I think they really need that. We saw what Mark Andrews did. I mean, he's good, but he did drop that pass. It would be nice to see maybe another option so you don't have to rely on him all the time. And the defense, I like that edge rusher. Maybe draft him. That'd be draft a good edge rusher. That'd be awesome. I mean, they've had an amazing defense. There's really not much more you could say other than that. They've been the top scoring defense, I think, the past 2 years maybe. So that's all I got to say about the defense there.
Yeah, I'm really glad, Kenny, you brought up receiver. It was definitely a need that I thought about, but it slipped my mind. And when you look at it, they definitely could use another receiver. Obviously, Zay Flowers proved that he could play at a Pro Bowl level receiver. I mean, he made the Pro Bowl last year, and Rashad Bateman proved that he could contribute as well. But Zay Flowers proved that he can't stay healthy. He does get hurt a lot, and Bateman can be in and out of the lineup as well. And you need 3 receivers, so you definitely want to get another guy. I know they got Isaiah Likely at tight end, so that kind of can take the pressure or kind of be their future replacement for Mark Andrews. But at receiver, you definitely want to get a third guy to go along with Zay Flowers and Bateman, like you said, Kaynen, because those guys can get hurt a lot, and you need 3 starting receivers anyways. So I'm definitely glad you brought that up. You could definitely use another receiver to go along with those guys. Another team who lost in the division round, a team that actually probably overachieved, unlike the last 2 teams we talked about, and that's the Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams were able to get to the second round of the playoffs and lose to the Philadelphia Eagles. Like I said, I definitely think they overachieved. I think most people thought they were going to be just miss the playoffs or first round exit. They made the second round of the playoffs, and a lot of that had to do with what they did in the offseason in 2024 with how great that draft was with getting Jordan Verst and Brandon Fisk. I mean, what this team has built, and what Sean McVay and the GM has built. I mean, even the fact that they haven't had all these top draft picks, they've been able still to be able to compete and build a competitive team each and every year. And McVay always coaches these guys up. Obviously, when you look at this offseason, we spoke about the fact that Stafford was able to restructure his deal, get the money he wanted. So we got to mention that. But what about Cooper Kupp? Cooper Kupp said that the Rams are going to trade him. Now, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that when you've seen the way the season progressed, Puka Nacua became the clear-cut number 1 option where he was pretty much getting a significant amount of targets, pretty much getting most of the workload. And then they were kind of working in guys like DeMarcus Robinson more so than they were doing Cooper Kupp. So I think Cooper Kupp, given his age and given his injuries and his money, I think they're going to try to trade Cooper Kupp for probably like a third round pick. I think they definitely should get at least a third round pick for him. And I think Cooper Kupp, when healthy, can still have a couple more, contributive, impactful seasons in the NFL. And I think for the Rams, they could, get rid of Cooper Kupp, try to save on some money and go kind of a youth movement at receiver with Puka Nacua as the clear-cut number 1, the new Cooper Kupp, basically. And you got a bunch of these young guys. I mean, when I look at how their offseason is going to shape out, they have $39 million in cap space. Now, they did just re-sign Jackson, their tackle. He's been a tremendous young player for them, and that was a huge re-signing. Their free agents are Noteboom, who's been kind of a player who's been on the declines. I don't see them re-sign him. DeMarcus Robinson, they're definitely going to re-sign because, like I said, if they're going to trade Cooper Kupp, they can't lose Cooper Kupp and DeMarcus Robinson. So I see them re-signing DeMarcus Robinson. You got Hyatt. Hyatt's been a pretty good pass rusher for them. But they drafted those guys the last 2 years with First and Young. So I think the fact that they got 2 young guys, they may not want to pay the money for Hyatt, who would be pretty much right now their third pass rusher. So unfortunately, even though he's been a great player for them, he's probably going to go. You got Rosenboom, their top inside linebacker. I think they'll re-sign him because inside linebackers don't get paid an awful lot of money. So you could probably get him on a cheap deal. And like I said, he's their best inside linebacker. So if you can keep your best inside linebacker at a reasonable contract, makes sense to keep him. Then you got guys like Akilla Witherspoon, John Johnson. I don't think they'll be able to re-sign those guys. Those guys didn't really play all that well, and I think they got some young guys that can replace them. So I think those guys are going to be gone. Atwell, their other receiver, they might be able to re-sign him on a short-term deal, but if they re-sign Robinson, they might let Atwell walk as well. And then when I look at their draft, they are drafting 26. What their needs are going to be is they definitely need a corner. They got some older guys on their teams who definitely seem like they're on the decline, and they got some young guys like Kobe Durant and Kendricks who are good, but I don't think they're ever going to be elite. So I definitely think they could get another young corner to go with those guys. I think they could also use more depth at edge rusher, linebacker, and O-line. And then another need I think they could do, and I'm not sure if they'll be able to do it this year because of where they're drafting, unless they decide to get a guy like Jackson Dart. They can use a young quarterback. They could definitely use a young guy that start grooming under Matthew Stafford. I think they might wait until 2026 where it's supposed to be a much stronger, deeper quarterback class, but I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a guy in the late second or third round pick that maybe they could try to develop. But ultimately, I think that they will wait another year, but that's definitely another need that they can consider as a young quarterback. What are your thoughts, Kaynen?
Yeah, I think they need to beef up the O-line. I mean, they have 6 picks this year, the one in the first round you mentioned. I'd say use some of those to get your offensive line beefed up, protect Stafford. He obviously had an issue if he was talking to Tom Brady in Montana there. He might want out, so that's something to do. I think what you said with Ulrich Johnson, he is awesome. Their left tackle. That was a major pickup. That will, stop them from having to use some of those picks on the new left tackle when you have a guy like that. So that's amazing. I think Cooper Kupp's out of there as well, just of how he's regressed, and Nakua coming up and showing himself as a clear number one. So that should be interesting. I'd like to see maybe a different running approach. They weren't very strong in that. So that'd be like my only other suggestion is maybe find a running back.
Yeah, I know. I definitely heard him with the injuries at running back last year. I know Blake Corum, their rookie, was hurt. And Kyron Williams, when he's healthy and on the field too, he's a great premier elite running back. And I think if they could get Blake Corum healthy, I think they can finally get him that 1-2 punch that he'd be looking for, and finally get a guy that they can put in so they don't have to run Kyron Williams into the dirt because they have to rely on him every single play. So I definitely think Blake Corum will be able to help that need as well. The last team we're going to break down, the other team that lost in the division round, the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans have been able to, with C.J. Stroud in his first 2 years, have been able to get to back-to-back second-round playoff appearances. And I know people are saying that's a disappointment because, you want to progress, but I think making it to back-to-back division rounds was definitely impressive, especially given the fact that the way that the regular season played out, a lot of people didn't give them a chance to win that wild card matchup against the Chargers, and ultimately they were able to do it. When I look at their offseason, I mean, their cap situation is not good. They're pretty much right at the cap limit. They're about minus $300K under the cap. Now, obviously, they'll cut some players, restructure some contracts, so they'll probably be able to get themselves a couple $1 million in cap space, but not a whole lot. Now, I know they will have cap space in the later years, just not this year. So any contracts they get will have to be kind of future dated. When I look at their free agents, they got Stephon Diggs. They got their defensive tackle, Fatotsky. They got Jeff Okudah. You got Hewitt. You got Mario Edwards Jr. I think a lot of those guys are a little on the older side, and they're probably not going to want to pay the money for them. So I think guys like Edwards, Fatotsky, Okudah will probably go. Hewitt, who is a good linebacker, Neville Hewitt, they already have good linebackers besides him as well. So they really don't need another linebacker, so they're probably going to let him hit the open market and keep that money since they're already set a linebacker. I think the one free agent that they will try to keep is Stephon Diggs. I think Stephon Diggs, given his age and the fact that he's coming off of injury, it makes sense for him just to stay there. Unless if he wants to go play with his brother in Dallas, I think it makes more sense for him just to stay on the team. You already got the chemistry built. Sign maybe a 1-year deal that's a short-term, less money deal. Prove that you can come back from your injury and you still got something, and then get your 2-year, 3-year deal after. So I think it makes sense mutually for them to re-sign. Then when I look at the rest of their offseason, they do have the 25th pick in the draft, and honestly, what their needs are is they need some offense and defensive line. They need some help in the trenches. C.J. Stroud was uncomfortable a lot last season and was sacked a lot. So they definitely need to protect them. And outside of Tunsil, a lot of their offensive linemen sucked. So you got to protect your franchise and Stroud. So you need offensive linemen. That's the biggest need. And they definitely need defensive tackle. Like I said, last year they didn't really have a great defensive tackle situation. They had great pass rushers, but not great defensive tackles. And not a lot now that a lot of those guys that they did have who were decent but not great are free agents and are leaving. So if they don't bring in any guys right now, and the way it looks at their current situation right now heading into 2025, they got one of the worst interior defensive line situations in the NFL. So they got to get defensive line as well, because you can't win the National Football League if you can't win in the offense or defensive line. And you got to win in the trenches in this league. And another need that they need is wide receiver. Now that you have Diggs, who even if you sign him, he is older, coming off injury. Nico Collins is a premier receiver, but you got Tank Dell, who's had a catastrophic injury back-to-back, and he's probably not going to play in 2025, and who knows if he's ever going to be the same again. You need to bring in another young guy to go along with those guys, to go along with Nico Collins. So even if Tank Dell doesn't come back fully recovered, you do have another young guy. So they need offensive line, they need defensive line, and they definitely need another young receiver. But what are your thoughts, Kaynen?
Yeah, I thought that was a huge hit last season with Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs going down, I think going forward, they're really going to need to look at that wide receiver position and make some changes. Like you said, Nico Collins is amazing, but you can't just throw to him every time. And I also like what you said about CJ Stroud. He does need a better line. As good as he is, he can't do it all himself. He was the second most sacked quarterback last season. So build up around Tunsil because, like you said, he's the only really decent lineman they have. Build up around him, create a better line, and hopefully get the ball off because he's been amazing. I don't think they should be upset about not advancing in the playoffs at all. The fact that they were able to make it these past couple of years and from the team that they had, I think that in itself is an accomplishment. So I'm really excited to see what they got going because who would have thought, with the Texans looking back 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, and when they originally, I hate to bring him up, but when they had Deshaun Watson, it looked like their team was going to be great. Deshaun Watson was gone to the playoffs, gone to the second round, and looks like that they were going to be able to have their franchise quarterback. And then the way that played out, you were like, well, damn, the Texans are about to be a dumpster fire for probably about the next 10 years, and there's no way they're going to ever be great again. Well, then they bring in the D'Amico Ryans. They have a smart GM who decided, you know what, we're going to get C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson Jr., and then all of a sudden, C.J. Stroud became one of the best young quarterbacks we've ever seen. And, if C.J. Stroud has another great season next year, he's going to be looking at a lot of money. And I wouldn't be surprised if, given the way the salary cap's moving and the way these quarterbacks are getting paid, like Dak Prescott getting 60, and some other quarterbacks are probably going to get more money than him in the next year or so. I wouldn't be surprised if a year or two from now when C.J. Stroud gets his deal and he continues his success, if C.J. Stroud's not looking at a $65 to $70 million a year contract. But that's going to do it here for the Football Forecast show, this episode this week. Next week, we have a lot to break down as well. We got the scouting combine that's going on right now as we speak. But we're going to break that down all next week and do our reactions. There's going to be a lot of great guys who broke out and stood out and a lot of guys who disappointed. We're also going to be breaking down next week all the teams who lost in the wild card. So we're going to be breaking down all those teams. Any breaking news or any news that happens, we'll be breaking down as well. So definitely make sure to be following us on social media at TFB Forecast ETB, and definitely make sure to be following us on all social medias. And we definitely can't wait to keep bringing you a show every week. And we love breaking down these teams, and we can't wait for the offseason to continue. So thank you guys. He's Kaynen Buckshot, I'm Anthony Balester, and we'll see you next week.